Who would be a Wolves fan, eh?
On goes Paul. People might yet win it here for Wolves. Blasting the shot. What a goal!
Life's good when Wolves win. Welcome, ladies and gents, to the latest episode of Wolves Fancast, part of the Audi Podcast Network. Joining me to talk about Wolves' dramatic win against Spurs yesterday, I've got Matt, Ed, and Blake. Hello, gentlemen. Now, before we get into the game, how nice is it to not have your Saturday ruined after a lunchtime kickoff?
Well, was it Gandhi that said never back the early kickoff? I think it was.
I believe it was.
It's one of them.
Or Buddha.
I might be paraphrasing. But it's just one of them. Like all the signs pointed in one direction, and was pleased it went against what I thought was the grain.
Just still genuinely still buzzing. Big thanks to everyone who's joining us live on YouTube, of course, and everyone's watching it back and listening via your ears on podcasts as well. Let's get right into it. Let's quickly talk about the team because there were changes with Bellegarde starting and João Gomez returning, but I think on paper this suited the opposition as best as possible. Would you say, Ed?
Yeah, I think it made sense. We needed the busyness in midfield of João Gomez, didn't we? And Bellegarde is the natural replacement to Neto. He's not obviously the same kind of player, but he's our most creative player off the bench, minus maybe the Spanish sensation that came on and changed the game towards the end. But it was the right decision, I think, for what we were going to go up against. We were up against the Tottenham side with a few injuries, and that busyness in midfield was key, I felt, for the game, as we discuss it later.
Definitely, and I'm really kind of keen to hear people's thoughts on Bellegarde because I'm slowly falling in love with that young man and how he plays football. But I think he seemed to try and fill that void that Neto has left in terms of his directness. Matt, a quick one on you. Obviously, Gomez came in, saw Doyle dropped to the bench. Bit harsh, so to speak, on Doyle, who I think seems to have done okay in his games so far. Do you think it's very much squad midfield rotation?
I think there is a bit of rotation of it. Gomez, I think, offers you a bit more of a physical presence, a bit more of a busyness about him, I guess. The concern was I thought we looked a really different team without Doyle against Sheffield United. I was wondering how we were going to get the ball around the field with as much finesse without Doyle being on when I saw he wasn't on the team sheet. But he seems to have a bit of a knack of when he comes on, has a bit of an impact, regardless of whether that be at the start of the game or the end of the game. So it was a bit of I think it was slightly harsh, but at the same time, when you're playing a team, regardless of Spurs' injuries and what have you, I think it's a case of you still need to have legs, and Gomez gives us that possibly more as a physicality than Doyle would have.
Yeah, obviously a lot was made in the week about Spurs' injuries and suspensions, and when I saw their starting lineup, that is still a 11 with, I believe, every outfield player internationally capped. It is still a very, very strongly assembled squad. It's like, we're struggling in midfield. We're just going to have to put in our £50 million midfielder in Basuma kind of thing. It feels a little violence to me personally. I'll say, Blake, what one for you? Now, you're our resident American, of course. What time did the game kick off for you, technically?
It wasn't that late because I live in Florida now, so 7:30. Not that bad.
Okay. So I guess my question for you then is, how did you feel at 25-8 yesterday morning? Because for all the fantastic things that happened yesterday within the game, we didn't really get out of the traps and conceded inside the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, we did. And in fairness, it was a brilliant goal. I mean, Kulishevsky just played a brilliant pass into what's his name, Poro, and then squared.
You might have lost Blake. We've probably lost Blake. Yes, we've lost him. We've lost him over the Atlantic. I was going to make a very rude joke then, but we'll digress.
Well, I could tell you from in my commentary position, I barely got going before that goal went in. I literally barely had time to have a drink or anything. It was not the ideal start, was it?
No, and I mean I've looked back at the goal a few times, and it did just feel like we weren't quite 100% at the races. I don't think it was like calamity of errors, Keystone Cops type vibes, but it just felt like Spurs just knew exactly how to pounce on us.
Yeah, we hadn't woken up. We hadn't woken up, had we? Sorry, Matt. It just felt like we hadn't woken up. That was probably their only real good move of the match as well. But yeah, it was poor defending. I think the still that you just had up there, it shows that there's 3 defenders that are caught blindsided straight away, with Semedo the only one following the run. And there was the slip beforehand, wasn't the dummy / slip that maybe Totti could have cut out from the pass that got out to Kulusevski on the right anyway. So I think there was 2 or 3 chances for us to stop that before that cross came in, and Brennan Johnson doing some Raheem Sterling stuff at the back post, wasn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of frustrates me to say this, to be honest, but credit to Brennan Johnson, because actually I think it's a very good run, and I'm sure someone somewhere with Yadar in their name would be blaming Semedo for that goal. And I think that still kind of sums it up for me when you look at it, that he's the only one actually being able to track that run. And, it must be frustrating, because I think beyond that, I don't really remember Johnson doing anything in the game, to be honest. And, well, politely, I can't remember much of Spurs doing anything in the game, because after that first 5 minutes, Wolves just took complete control over the game.
Yeah, what I found when I was watching it was that both sides were getting into the opposition territory easily enough, but nobody had a killer final pass. Spurs didn't. We didn't. We were attacking with intent. Semedo had the keys to Molineux on wide on the right. He was being given so much space, and we'd get him, but we just lacked that final pass. I don't know if you got a graphic for it, but the corner delivery yesterday was atrocious. And it was we just lacked that killer final edge that just would give us the goal scoring chances. I know we had a couple of chances, but Spurs on the whole were, they defended quite desperately as well. It wasn't a game filled with quality, but it had a Hollywood ending. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Let's talk corners, because I tweeted about it throughout the game, and I sound such a Neanderthal when I say it. It's like, how hard can it be? I don't know. Like, if you don't have the technique to kind of do one of those really flat whipped crosses in that kind of skim over, 6 foot in the air, past the first man, and really make it difficult, maybe don't do it. I don't know. And it wasn't just, I think Bellegarde took the first few, and they kept hitting the first man to a point where I was like, is this a deliberate tactic that only he is on the same wavelength to, we're knocking this near post, lads, and just no one else is picking up on it? And then I think Aït-Nouri started taking over them, and it got almost beyond a point of frustration to it becoming comical at one point. And I think that's sort of where we've probably missed. Funnily enough, we've actually missed Neto and arguably Doyle in terms of actually being able to put in a delivery that is going to actually make it worth Wilson and Kilman and Totti running 70 yards at the pitch.
Yeah, it felt like they were kicking a medicine ball rather than a football, didn't it? The corners, it just didn't seem like they could get it more than 3 or 4 foot off the ground. It was bizarre. I've hated short corners ever since I can remember, but I was actually desperate for us to try one yesterday. That's how bad it was getting. I just thought maybe if we just got it 10 yards closer to the box, we might be able to lift it in. It was criminal how many. I mean, I know the stats on you actually scoring from corners are quite low, but it always gets the crowd going, doesn't it? A corner, and we all sing "Come on, Wanderers," and we all get excited, and then we just hit the first man. 9 times out of 10 probably yesterday. It was awful.
I believe, top of my head, and forgive me, listeners, if I'm wrong on this. I think it's about a 1 in 20 chance of scoring from a corner, which
it's low. Yeah,
it's
very,
about
very
5.
low.
I'm sure it's about 5%, but you're not exactly doing yourself any favours if you're getting it nowhere near. Your target men. But for me, and I think you touched on something there, Ed, is that Spurs were a rotated team. I know. They still got England former, I guess, international and Eric Dyer. They still got experienced, well sent, defender in Ben Davis. But still, make them test them when they're going to have to be organised in those set pieces, because the chances are that's where they'll have their breakdown in terms of where they need to be at certain positions. If you've got players who are filling in certain gaps, and it just felt like that could have been a way we exploited them. And I guess one of the reasons it was so frustrating is because corners are sort of indicative of how well you're playing as well, because it's a sign that you're getting up the pitch. And when you've had 4, 5, 6 of them, and none of them have done anything, as I mentioned, our 3 centre backs must be fuming.
Well, there was a chance. Even there was a free kick that was taken that kind of evaded Gomez, and it meant that 8-0 had to take it on his right, and we just didn't quite have a team like organized. Put my teeth in. We weren't organised well when it comes to our set pieces. It felt like, and then the delivery when it came in, wasn't great either. It was just a strange performance from both teams, where both teams were kind of, I think, suffering the effects of them not getting off to, well, Wolves especially not getting off to a great start. I suppose Spurs did, but yeah, just two teams that were just struggling with the occasion almost. It was a strange one. And Wolves, I mean, they certainly had a go and they were playing kind of well, but it was that killer last pass, and it wasn't until I watched it on the highlights how good like Hwang's chance was, and there was an Acuna one that was sliced as well. It was just on another day we would have been out of sight, which is strange to think considering the team that was so high at the table as Spurs are/were.
I mean, for Hwang one, it almost felt like at the time he thought he was offside because it was such a gilt-edged chance. I mean, that actually came from a bad corner, and it was arguably the worst one of the day. And it ended up sort of getting itself played out of the box. I think Gomez had a shot, and it kind of falls to Hwang, who, was fairly quiet yesterday. And the Kuna one as well. But the Kuna one for me was somewhat even more frustrating because of how good the play was in the build-up. And it was this sort of beautiful, intricate passing where you've got so much movement and everyone kind of, they've got that feel and understanding. I think it was like Gomez, was it, who sort of broke forward and just carried on running, and just it was magnificent to see. But it's a bit of the same old story that it came into the box and Kuna, effectively hit it with his ankle and it curves the wrong way. And it did sort of feel like it was going to be a day of, we've played well, we've tried hard, we've conceded early, and that's what's let us down. But we've put in a good performance for the fans. But this team's got something about them, and I think time and time again now, and it's gone beyond coincidence at this point, but this team has the right mentality to do stuff. You look at I think it might even be all our wins this season, they've all come really late on in terms of the winners. And for, firstly, you got the likes of Doyle coming on and changing the pace in the midfield, and also Sarabia, who, bless him, he's got his critics within the parish of the Fancast and otherwise. Has there ever been a greater 10 minutes of someone in a Wolves shirt apart from Stu during his Caravan of Love era?
He certainly put a lot of us
not
to
from a
shame,
substitute.
didn't he?
Not from a substitute's point of view. I don't remember the last time a sub came on and had such a direct impact. But I think there was something in the group chat, wasn't there, about he's the first player to come on as late as he did and have a goal and assist, which is pretty nuts. And the goal itself from Sarabia, I mean, the pass from Cunha is harder than the shot that you and Matt were just talking about, Rich. So how he was able to curl that in, but he could do a much simpler job with his shot earlier on in the game, I don't know. But he doesn't, I think it was Andy Gillard, shout out Cage Fighting pod, in the group chat that pointed out that Sarabia never looks at the goal once. He takes the touch, he watches the ball, and he slots it home, volleys it home. And it's a finish that you would expect of a Spanish international that went to the World Cup last year, but he's not really the player that we've seen down the Molineux for the last 18 months or so, or however long we've had him.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, in terms of the stats around Sarabia yesterday, Pablo Sarabia's introduction in the 87th minute is the latest a player has come on to both score and assist in a single Premier League game. And Pablo Sarabia's equaliser was the 14th Premier League goal scored by a Wolves player this season, but the first to be neither scored or assisted by either Pedro Neto or Hwang Hee-chan. That is a very fun way of saying that sentence, but yeah. Great to see someone actually stepping up and getting a goal. And of course, and this is one I find the most amazing, is 35 people on FPL Captain Pablo Sarabia this week.
Wow, that's incredible foresight / blind faith, isn't it?
That is something. I mean, I'm pretty sure Ramiro's still in my fantasy football team because I forgot to change it the last 3 weeks. But yeah, I'm sliding down the table a little bit on that. So hopefully after the international break, I can regroup and refresh and go again, I guess. But let's talk the goal, because the pass from Cunha to pick him out, the run, the touch, the volley, it was just a work of art, wasn't it, fellas?
It was brilliant. And dare I say it, I actually think that finish rivals in many ways Neves' finish against Derby. Technically speaking, it wasn't as magnificent, but I think in terms of the skill that it required, it was absolutely fantastic, because that first touch is just perfect. And I just think it was absolutely beautiful. Belongs in the Louvre.
Well, it does. And it's bonkers because obviously it's a 91st minute equaliser. It was really nice to sort of see everyone celebrate with him, because it must be quite hard for a player who's on the edge of things, and he is about 4th, 5th choice now in terms of being one of those forward players effectively. Not quite. I sort of get what you're saying, but I think that Neves goal is in I'm demonstrating it via my screen. Apologies, audio listeners, but Neves is way past the lights behind me in terms of the magnitude of that. If I'm going to be honest, but it was really fun to see, chiefly because I think I said it on the last pod I was on, but it's like a goal that you don't see Wolves score often. Like, when do you ever see? I mean, even if you take aside the one touch finish, touch and finish, we don't tend to have players who make that type of run. Does that make sense? And we don't have that kind of pass that splits the defence in two, and just opens up the pitch all of a sudden.
Yeah, he made a run that no one else in that game had made, didn't he? Yesterday, I think that was the difference. The space was there, set up by Gary O'Neill catching the ball and giving it to for Totti to take the throw. But it's not basic in terms of, it's not a bad run, but it's a very straight, very obvious run into space. And Cunha's ball has picked him out, and yeah, Blake's right. The first touch is definitely better than Neves' goal. I think we can agree with that. But I think the finish is maybe where the difference is. But yeah, it was the run of a player that thinks and a pass from a team that think we had a chance in this game. We never let it die yesterday, did we? I think that's the difference. And the camaraderie in the team that you can see from the fact that everyone did, it wasn't just limbs off the pitch, it was on the pitch as well, wasn't it, yesterday? So I think you can see that whether or not, we talk about the gonometer again, there's definitely something going on.
He's just safely in, green light green at the moment.
Yeah.
I think that's
he's fine right now.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, isn't it? I think the fact that whatever has happened in the last however many weeks we've had the new management team, we're fitter. The team is fitter. With the fact that we're scoring later in games, I think proves that. And I think that's the biggest difference that you can see, as well as the tactics. It's the fact that we were willing to go, and we went again, of course, Rich, with the next goal as well.
Yeah, and I know sort of Gary O'Neill alluded to it in his pre-match stuff about wanting to make sure the players are almost robotic. It was talking about dealing with refereeing decisions, and I think we've said it before. Wolves, particularly under Lopetegui, were quite an emotionally vulnerable side. Not in the sense of they're about to cry, but they just didn't handle when things went against them, and they didn't channel it in the right way. So you'd have, you look back at that Leeds game, and yeah, things didn't go our way, and they just lost their heads. Even at the start of the season, think of Mateus Nunes when he got sent off against Brighton, and it seems like they've worked really hard on having that resilience. And sometimes it is just dealing with decisions that don't quite go your way in games, and carrying it through onto the next one. But it's also having that belief, isn't it? And I think even with O'Neill's first game against Man United, and we got all those plaudits about how well we played, and I remember doing shows and saying, I'm all for playing well, and we did yesterday, but it doesn't really matter if you're 10 games in and it's not quite working, and people aren't busting a gut, aren't doing those runs. They aren't, trying to break the lines because they don't have confidence in it working. And if nothing else, that and I sort of doubt that Wolves will push on past 10th place personally still. And I think we have really solidified ourselves in being, 10th to 13th. I think that is where we fit, to be honest, and probably will be come May. But seeing how they are able to respond to these situations is fantastic, and they've just got that belief in themselves and the manager that if we keep trying it doesn't matter if it's in the first minute or the 91st minute, we can get a goal here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mini miracle in itself that we're 12th now, and looking at possibly going to 10th in the coming weeks. So, I mean, it's to think of how we were talking at the start of the season, and we were all pretty much strapped in and thinking that we were going to be relegation strugglers, and now it seems like we couldn't be further from it. And considering how badly a lot at the bottom of the table, it may be that we have enough points for safety already. So, yeah, it's much better. And when I was a kid and I played ice hockey, we had a saying that if you always expect bad refereeing, you're rarely disappointed. And I think as a football team, any sport team to begin with, you just have to accept that there's going to be terrible decisions made, and you just have to win the game. Doesn't matter. It's going to have to it's going to happen no matter whether you like it or not, and you just have to get over it and win. And with Spurs, we did it. And yeah, it was fantastic, obviously.
Yeah, let's talk about that last goal, because it was a moment of something. For those listening, you'll hear the sound clip. Head over to our YouTube channel to see it. But let's just relive it one more time, guys. Just magnificent. You know what? There are so many things I could say. That is my favourite thing about it. And let's just go around the room. You know what mine is? And it's a niche one. It's the advertisement board. Because as soon as that ball goes out wide to Sarabia, it then flicks up saying, "Score, hero." Sam Bagnall, who's a Wolves photographer, who many of you might know of, got a great shot of it. And it was like Lamina celebrating. It had "Score, hero." I was like, hang that in the Louvre. Like, honestly, you can. What's your hang that in the Louvre moment of that goal?
I think it is. I think it's the celebration at the end. I think that's where it is, isn't it? I think it's the culmination of Lamina was the best player on the park for me yesterday, and I think it's that celebration, him skidding on his knees. It's the culmination of the effort, the hard work, and the graft that we put in yesterday. And I think to have that school hero in the background, which I think is a nice touch.
Yeah, and the fact that our two subs literally ran across the pitch. It's silly booking. I believe they both got booked.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Yeah, and João Gomez is someone who likes the yellow card anyway. So yeah, but I love it because in their heads, it's literally like, well, we're still in this team. We're still playing. We're in this mix now. So why wouldn't we celebrate? And I think, to be fair, they did celebrate the Sarabia goal, but of course Sarabia ran over to the touchline. So I think they slightly got away with it, so they didn't encroach the pitch. There was a great picture doing the rounds on social media by someone. So if I can just find their name, it was by Alison Owen who took the photo, and it's a great shot because I don't quite know how it's laid out, but I think it's at the point where Gomez and Aït-Nouri are getting the card, and it's just got a Spurs fan just flicking the finger at them as they're just giving it the big one, and I just love it. I just don't care. It's brilliant.
It is fantastic, but I think we'd be remiss not to mention the fact that finish from Lamina was absolutely intentional and not a whiff. The first time that I viewed it, I thought for sure he just completely whiffed on the ball. And then watching the replay, you see his foot totally angling that ball perfectly into the corner of the goal. It's just. Oh.
I was going to say, I realised I've not actually talked about the goal whatsoever, have we? We did skip from stupid celebrations now, which that's the part that stays with you, though, isn't it? And you know who I think deserves a lot of credit for it, and shout out to regular listener to the show still with me, it's Tommy Doyle, because I believe I can't remember who got fouled on the halfway line.
Lamina.
But was it even more amazing? It was Lamina. Because he was still pressing in the 97th minute to get in front and get ahead of his man, and I found it really interesting because I saw it in real time. You got Doherty, who's just properly having a go at the ref because I think he didn't give one earlier in a similar position. But Doyle just quite literally put his foot on the ball and sprayed a great forward pass out wide, and it just opened up the entire pitch. And I think that's kind of why I kind of mentioned him in a way, because he does things that none of our other midfield players do in terms of things like that, and he's not a water bottle carrying midfielder, or however you like to to describe it, and to again have the presence in the moment with the atmosphere, being 1-0 up, 1-1, and everything that goes with it to actually keep a level head and to pick a pass rather than what could have easily happened. Just everyone goes forward, Saar lumps it in, goes nowhere, and they play for full time. And again, amazing incisive ball from Sarabia and getting his assist. And Lamina yesterday, that's one of the best midfield performances I've seen a Wolves shirt in a long time. That wasn't just a really dogged performance. He was on the front foot. Obviously, he was great in the tackle, but he was great on the ball and just pushing the play on when he could. And there was a couple of points yesterday because he had that opportunity himself in the second half, where in a very similar position to where Sarabia was for his goal, and he tried to kind of cut it back, and it didn't go to anyone. But something that sort of is missing from that Wolves midfield is having someone to now and again try and break into the box, and it seemed like that was Lamina's job today, and he didn't quite execute it the first time around in the second half. He definitely did in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, we've had metronomic midfielders, haven't we? With Moutinho and Neves. And their performances were very much on controlling the pace of the game and slowing it down and, sidewards and not negative necessarily, but sidewards passing and the long ranging passes. But Mario Lamina it was a throwback yesterday to an old fashioned box to box midfielder, wasn't it? He had a chance in the first half that was a good save from Vicario as well, I think, when he cut in and had a shot from sort of the right hand side of the box. He had that pullback that was inches away from getting to Doherty to tap it in, and then of course the goal. But his quick feet in the midfield and the driving nature of when he picked up the ball and he'd go forward is something we have been missing, and maybe next to a Neves, if we could have merged those two eras of our team, would have been, truly wonderful to see him given that free license to be a little bit more forward thinking. And that's what I guess you have when you play him with Joao Gomez, is the fact that Lamina maybe is allowed to be that 5-10 yards further forward sometimes, and some of the intricate passing in midfield between sort of the fullbacks and the midfielders was quite mesmerising yesterday. I thought it was a very, very complete performance from nearly every one of our players. I couldn't think of one that really played badly. But Lamina he drove that team on yesterday. He was exceptional.
Yeah. And genuinely to be still pushing on him for 97th minute to be the furthest forward player to get that goal, I think, for him, he's slowly becoming a genuine cult player at Wolves. And a couple of players I wanted to sort of pick out before I kind of do a bit of stats from the game was Bellegarde. Again, just such a fun player to watch. He might not quite know what he's doing all the time, but there is definitely something about him that I think slowly but surely he could have a real big impact in this league.
Yeah, I think that all players kind of have to adapt to the Premier League a bit. But like you said, watching Belgrade has been really fun. And from the second that he came on as a Wolves player, I thought that he had something to him. So it's going to be really exciting to see where he goes. And considering that he's certainly not hurting the team by being the starting 11, I can't argue against having a minute.
No, and I think, I think Neves is sort of due back start of December. Is the current projections from his hamstring injury. And you've sort of got to hope that he's going to actually, someone like him, is going to keep asking questions, because, yes, we've got Hwang, who is pretty consistent in front of goal and has a useful knack of getting in the right positions. You've got Kuna, who I find a very fascinating player. And sometimes he can frustrate the living hell out of you because he doesn't necessarily do the finished product. But then, when he switched to playing on the left yesterday, when Sasa came on, it was like he was a different player. When the pitch had opened up, he was magnificent in that wide left role. And I'd be interested to see if there's an option at some point to have him on the left and maybe have Kladnic in the middle and Neto on the right, sort of thing, maybe. But yeah, with Bellegarde, I really hope that this isn't just his level. I hope his ceiling's a lot higher than this, because those little glimpses that you see of what he does, and again, it's the footwork, it's the trickery, but it's also how he just gets the play going forward. And I don't know, like, he's got a bit of experience under his belt, but yeah, I just want to be. I just really hope that he's got that belief and potential to be a star player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's got the dog in him, hasn't he? I think that's a phrase that you could use for him. He doesn't know when to go down. His driving runs were impressive yesterday. I think some of his passing towards the final third of the pitch will come with time, you'd imagine. But I think I'd prefer to see him at least getting into those positions like he was yesterday, than sort of being timid and maybe going backwards when he could have gone forwards. But yesterday he was driving at the team. And I think when you've just gone through some of our options there, which I think it's really important to know that we do have those horses for courses type things that we could do now. We do have a tall centre forward that we can play with Neto, a Hwang or a Bellegarde that will be able to give him service. Cunha can be flexible enough to go out on the left. And I think that when Sasha came on yesterday, I don't think Tottenham dealt with the fact that we changed formation a little bit. And they didn't deal with Cunha very well at all. When he moved out wide, there was more drive from the team with him having more space to run into, like you correctly pointed out. And I think that was a big thing for it yesterday, that Sasha was a threat that they had to worry about, which gave a little bit more space for Cunha to really step into.
Definitely. I guess we kind of talked briefly about it, but where does Bellegarde fit in when Pedro returns? And to be honest, I think it's all dependent on form and fitness of the players, because it's difficult to see. And this is sounding overly negative. It's not meant to be from someone who scored in half a dozen consecutive home game scores, but Hwang isn't going to keep up that form all season. Neto's probably not. Will Cunha, if he's not linking up the play, you might start asking questions of him at certain points. So I completely agree, Ed, that there is enough flexibility in this team depending on the opponents as well. And I definitely think that changing system kind of go from 3-5-2 to 4-3-3 borderline seamlessly. Like it didn't have any impact at the back. It just asks so many more questions, and the fact that when you bring on a 6 foot, a million centre forward, it's like just absolutely, it just throws defenders' minds into chaos, and they all kind of just tucked in that a little bit more. And for someone like Cunha, that's brilliant. Just gives him that bit more space. And as Chris Rogers says in the YouTube comments, it feels nice to have some squad depth. And we're all anxious with how we're going to get on without Pedro Neto. And we didn't do well against Sheffield United, particularly second half. But I don't think it wasn't that we didn't miss Neto yesterday, but I don't think he was the overriding impact into why we didn't convert chances, because we had a lot of them consistently. When you look at the amount of shots that we had, the XG statistics that came up from this game, this wasn't a case of Spurs losing. This was Wolves deserving a win. And it just so happened they came in added time. And I don't know if you guys saw the clip of Gary O'Neill in the changing room yesterday. And it was really cool, I thought, for a number of reasons. Particularly, you see it a lot in American sports. Particularly NFL post game, they do a lot of clips in the locker room of the when we give out the match ball, and you'll have a head coach talking. You don't really get it here. You don't get that insight, which is a real shame. For whatever reason it is, Gary O'Neill's really keen to get his message out there publicly, and the club definitely are too. Whether it's him doing Monday Night Football or that clip of him, setting the standard, I believe it was, saying that that's our level. Yesterday, that's what we need to happen. It was very humbling as well, because he sort of says, I couldn't do that when I was a player. It was, I could work hard and everything else, but I couldn't have done what you guys did yesterday. But now we need to do that week in, week out. And it's obviously it happens after every win or whatever. That's the bar you set, but it doesn't half make you feel good. But when it definitely gets you want to get behind him.
I think there's a lot of accountability there as well, isn't there, with all of this PR that the club are doing, that Gary O'Neill's doing. There's an accountability there that he wants to hold the players to that standard, because we are where we are for a reason, right? We can't beat Sheffield United. We've had some dreadful decisions against us, but we played pretty poorly against Luton, poorly against Sheffield United, brilliantly against Man City. There's a reason we are where we are in the table, like Blake talked about earlier. So I think all of that is accountability, not just for the players, but also for Gary O'Neill to say to the fans that we have at times doubted him, that there is some accountability there, and this is the standard that I hold the players to, so therefore that's the standard that you need to hold me to. I don't know if that's what he's thinking in the background, but he's coming across really well at the minute, really, really well in the public eye, definitely.
Well, I said at the start of the season that one of the opportunities that Gary O'Neill is going to bring is that it was going to bring Wolves an opportunity to sort of start afresh and get this rebirth that I think Wolves needed after losing so many players. And as tough as it was to see Lopetegui go, I think we can all agree Lopetegui wasn't all that interested in being Wolves manager when it really came to it. And I just feel like Gary O'Neill wants to be here. Whether or not long-term he's going to be the correct fit remains to be seen. But at the moment, I don't know. I've really come around to him, and I think that there's going to be some really exciting times ahead. Yeah.
I'm really chuffed with that attitude that they all seem to have at the moment, and in theory, it shouldn't matter if we're against one of the big boys. And interesting, when you look at Wolves' results against the big six in this calendar year, we've only actually lost one, and that's to Liverpool this season. We beat Liverpool back in January. We beat Spurs towards the end of last season. We beat Chelsea the end of last season. We obviously lost Liverpool earlier this season. We beat Man City, and now we've beaten Spurs all at Molineux, and it is becoming a real fortress again. And I think whether we can do it at least against, it sounds bad when we say it's always dependent. Wolves' league position is more dependent on how we do against West Ham, Crystal Palace, Brentford, Everton level, because we're all vying for the same points. But actually, we have now made it a place where teams will be worried about coming to. You'll have opposition fans now, hopefully, kind of looking at the fixture list and going, "Ooh, got Wolves away next week. That's not going to be a fun one." Whereas we definitely didn't have that under Bruno Lage, and I doubt we really had it in Lopetegui.
I think the key to the success from that point of view is when you are playing your teams that are sitting further back or aren't going to have allow us to play a counter-attacking game. How do we unlock that door? Because it's something that I think nearly every manager under the Fosun era has struggled with at times. You look back to Huddersfield, everybody talks about, and take games that, it's just football heritage, isn't it, of Wolves to lose to Sheffield United, but gain us points back at Spurs, not beat Luton, but beat City. It's in our DNA, and, there won't be long-term success until we can kind of turn that around. And I'm hoping Gary O'Neill is the man to be able to do that, because tactically he's obviously very astute. He certainly enjoys talking a good game about it, the whole Monday Night Football thing. So it's just, the one worry from yesterday, and listen, it was a fantastic result, and the Hollywood ending was great, but I felt like we looked like we were running out of ideas a little bit towards the end of the game, and then all of a sudden that one piece of magic just switched everything around. Like, it only looked like one team was going to win that game, but it's how you break down those teams that sit back and really it's about not getting dragged down to their level. With as much respect in the world to Sheffield United, they're awful. They're truly terrible. And our success this season will be not based on turning it on against the big teams, but turning it on against, your relegation fodder.
Definitely. And rather interestingly, I did love something that Gary O'Neill said post-match, which a friend of Fancast Parish, Ben Husband, said that Gary O'Neill was like, I thought the job would be harder considering the comments of the former manager. That is a burn. You've got Lopetegui still hanging around Wolverhampton in case a big job comes up. I believe he is potentially about to go off to get the Saudi money. Now Nuno's been sacked, but yeah, there seems to be a good vibe at the moment around Molineux, which is all we can ask for. And this puts Wolves now having scored in 11 consecutive Premier League games, 18-match run between August and December 2019 is the milestone to beat. And again, it's, I guess, a little bit reductive in a way, but we're now going into games expecting that Wolves are going to score. It still might, we're still not going to score 3 or 4 or whatever, but but the opportunity is just going, actually, you know what? We're going to get at least a goal here. If we can just be sensible at the back, then we're always with a chance at the moment. And definitely that's something that has very dramatically changed considering the last 24 months at Molineux.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad that we've kind of broke the back of that stat or the media narrative that we can't score, because it was getting really depressing. There is a horrible stat about how many we've conceded as well, though. As I said in my comments yesterday. So I know we're trying to let's talk positive when we can. I think it's going to be really interesting to see over the remainder of the season with like Dawson's suspension and other things, how we go from that front, because I don't necessarily want this to turn into like a Kevin Keegan squad. As long as we score 4, it doesn't matter if we concede 3. But it's certainly made the game and football a bit more exciting to watch, hasn't it? And it's given a bit more sizzle and spice. It being a bit more kind of end-to-end and goals going in here, there and everywhere. Yeah. And to be fair, we're not looking awful defensively, but we are still having those kamikaze moments. Particularly, like that Brighton game, for example, where, the wheels just fell off. And again, it's going to be a case of, well, how do we stand up when we do have those blips in games? And, do it stay conceding 1, or does it, snowball into conceding 3? And you mentioned Dawson, Matt, and I'm interested to sort of hear people's thoughts on this, because I've seen a lot of stuff from angry Spurs fans on Twitter, which, we'll put them in their own special category, I guess. But they were under the illusion that Dawson should be sent off for 2 incidents involving Son. Anything in either of them for you guys?
No. just out and out no. I mean, his foot happened to be in a very uncomfortable area for Son on the second challenge, but it's clear it wasn't intentional. There was nothing in the foul that made it inherently a red card. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything in it.
No, it smacks of desperation. Desperation from a team that were higher than fans of a team that were higher than they thought they were going to be in a game where they thought they're probably just going to, hold on to that 1-0 win. It's the murmurings of desperation, isn't it, from a team that says, hang on, there was a couple of challenges that were a bit more robust than we're used to. We need to find a reason why we lost yesterday, rather than just admitting that they were outplayed because they do have a lot of injuries. Well, they have important injuries. I'm guessing their two best performers of the season so far, barring Son, weren't available yesterday. But no, there was nothing in either of them. I think it just smacks of desperation, personally.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I think for the second one where it's as the YouTube comment says, unintentional nut stomp. Great band name. Anyway, like I personally thought Son was doing a bit more for fouling, to be honest, and I think on another day, I think a ref just says carry on, and I'm gonna say it. I actually thought the ref did quite well yesterday. By and large, I think he let the game flow when he needed to, and he was consistent in what he was dishing out cards for personally. Apart from, I think there was one on the halfway line. I can't remember, it was just before we scored, but I actually think he controlled the game quite well personally. And you know what? I slag off refs quite a lot. They deserve it, but I didn't think he was all that bad yesterday. To be honest.
Yeah, it was just fine. I mean, there was nothing really to complain about other than one of the Tottenham players should have been died for booking, and I can't remember what happened, but it was in our end. He awarded a goal kick despite the fact that I don't know. Anyways, it doesn't really matter that much, and yeah, it was just fine.
Yeah. Which is sort of what you want in a referee, isn't it? You know, the fact that you don't have to talk about it is usually a good thing, and I think it was a shame to see Dawson get that booking because it does mean he misses the Fulham game, and I know Fulham are without Plenia when we play them on the 27th of November. It feels like it's going to be a long old wait between games now, which is a bit of a frustrating one, but. Yeah, we'll get there. We will get there. But we've got I know it's an interesting couple of fixtures we've got coming up, and they come thick and fast at the end of November, start of December, as you know, because we try and fill as much as possible in the December period. But we've got Fulham at home, then Arsenal at home, Burnley away, and then Forest away, all within the space of a couple of weeks, just short. Scores on the door, just because it's nice to look ahead. How many points are we getting from those 4 games, guys?
I'd like to say 7. Realistically, I think Forest have an unbelievable home form, don't they? But away from home, they're awful. Burnley should be awful. We looking at where they are in the table. Arsenal, you expect to lose to, and Fulham, Jimenez will probably get a second. He scored today, didn't he?
He did, yes.
But
it was a consolation, but yeah.
Yeah, I expect him to probably get a goal just because that's how life works. So realistically 7, but I wouldn't be surprised if that ended up maybe being 5, maybe an unexpected draw against a Burnley or someone like that.
Yeah, I'd take between 5 and 7. I think that's quite healthy. But he said, knowing Pools, it will be that we get a draw against Arsenal, we'll lose to Burnley. That would be the Wolves' way, surely.
Yeah, it's not out of the realms of possibility that we go unbeaten in that run of 4 as well, is it? I think that's we cover the whole gamut, don't we? As a club, we can. I don't know. We can lose to Burnley, who look as bad as Vinny Company does in his suit and cap at the end of the games. I wish he'd take it off when he has his interviews after the game. It's just an aside, I can't stand it. But we could definitely go unbeaten in that run and still only pick up maybe 5 points out of it. But I think Blake touched on it earlier. I had us finishing 15th this year, but only based on the fact that I thought there just would be teams way worse than us, and I didn't expect us to be anywhere near the points per game that we're getting at the moment. And the fact that I can, after 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was on here saying that I thought we had a geography teacher in charge of our team, to now thinking that maybe we can go unbeaten in these next 4 is a lot of humble pie.
I'd say I completely see you thinking of actually, we could go unbeaten. We could, get 8 points, let's say, win 2, draw 2, or even draw all 4, considering the opposition. But I know for me, it's football's made up of narratives, isn't it? And if we're still playing exciting football, people see it as that we're going unbeaten rather than we're not winning. And I feel like at the moment, there's a nice feel around the club, and we're all very much on that. You know what? We're unbeaten, and it might not always be a win, but we're staying in games, and that's really important. And looking at the league table, we're 12 games in now. We're effectively just short of a third of the way through the season now, and on 15 points in 12th. Maybe a lot of people didn't quite predict it. I kind of thought we'd finish between 12th and 14th this season, going into the season, even before Lopetegui ups and left, just because there is quality in that squad. But I was always hopeful that there was worse teams in the league than Wolves, and I think that the league table is very much showing that there are worse teams than Wolves at the moment, and it's nice to be at a point where we're looking up the table and working out, well, you know what, if we do beat Fulham and a couple of teams lose, and we get a draw against Arsenal and we get that win against Burnley, we could be pushing 9th quite easily there, or even getting into 8th. It's nice to dream, isn't it, boys?
Dare to dream. Dreaming isn't free.
Dreaming of finishing 9th. That's a dream, innit?
Well, to be fair, considering after the first few games and the start and people waving the white flag already, I think 9th place is getting nosebleeds and all sorts, to be fair. But actually, it's funny how expectations shift, isn't it, as the season goes on. But I mean, you look at after the table today, how adrift some of the teams at the bottom are already. Whilst the title race might get super exciting, those bottom 3 are looking like more doomed by the day, aren't they? By the fixtures.
I'll say the only thing that's going to make at the moment in time, the only thing that's going to make it interesting is Bournemouth, and working out which of 3 out of 4 at the moment. Although Bournemouth did get a good win yesterday, so who knows? They could kind of push themselves up, and there's a couple of teams down there in terms of Forest and Fulham for me who might quite. I think Fulham have probably got enough about them personally, but I know we're playing them in 4 games' time. I'd quite like Forest to get second season syndrome, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, they can go for another 30 years for me. I'm okay with that.
I'd say I'd be very polite and courteous about it. I was hoping someone else would step up and air their thoughts on the matter. But yeah, life's good as a Wolves fan at the moment, everyone. And that's where we'll wrap up the show today. Big thanks to everyone who's listened. Unless anyone else has got a last-minute wonder point to make, Alice Sarabia, we'll close it off there. No, we've all given ourselves in the first 59. Don't worry, guys. Big thanks to everyone who's listened, everyone who's watched live on YouTube, everyone who's watched back. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. It means a lot to help us grow the channel. If you're not already, make sure that you follow us on our social media pages. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Anywhere and everywhere, guys. Massively appreciate it as always. We will be hopefully back to preview the Fulham game in a couple of weeks' time. And until then, it's goodbye from Blake.
See you, everybody.
It's goodbye from Ed.
See you later, everyone.
It's goodbye from Matt.
Take it easy, everybody. Have a good week.
And it's goodbye from me. See you next time, guys.